I never understood why some people ask, what is the meaning of life? Because it's such a silly question. Life doesn't mean anything. I mean, fortune tellers of old would cast chicken bones or tea leaves or shuffle tarot cards and pretend to read what they mean, because they say there are no accidents, no such thing as coincidence. So if you believe that everything happens for a reason, then you'll imagine that whatever way the tea leaves fell means something. So you can pretend to read it, which really means that you're just going to make up whatever you wanted to believe anyway. That's what faith is all about. Rational people, however, understand that not everything is or can be intended, that there's no way to manipulate everything if it was intended, and even if everything was intentional, there would still be occasional coincidence. Whatever way the tea leaves fell doesn't really mean anything, it just is. So similarly, nihilism is the position that life was not intentionally put here for any planned purpose. It just is an emergent property, and as such, has no intended meaning beyond whatever we choose to give it. I knew a Christian pastor who told his own congregation in a sermon that if what happens today doesn't still matter 5 billion years from now, then it doesn't matter now. He said that if his soul couldn't continue to exist for absolutely forever, then he sees no reason to have any compassion for anyone else while he lives. That if he can't be immortal, then life is without meaning or value. So he has no reason to prolong anyone's life or to minimize their suffering, because everything is pointless and nothing really matters. His was the most morose philosophy I've ever heard, and it was sickeningly selfish. So much so that he's in no place to lecture me about either morality or nihilism. If there was a heaven, I'd rather not go. Thanks, but no thanks. It doesn't matter how nice it is at first. Any sort of inescapable eternity would inevitably become an intolerable damnation eventually. Imagine a condition so permanent that after billions of years you've had enough, but you can't even end it by suicide. When I was a little boy and I still believed in God, I remember praying to him, asking, can't I just die? I mean, completely, body and soul? I mean, if I had a soul, which of course no one does, but I didn't know any better then because I was just a kid. If you wait long enough, heaven becomes hell. And I realized it wouldn't be a very long wait for me, being trapped forever with an indomitable despot who can read your mind. God is an incredibly, inexplicably insecure narcissist who cannot hear a moment of criticism, so you'd better be thinking nice thoughts all the time. It's good that you did that awful thing, God. I mean, it's real good. No. When I come to the end of my life, just let me die, just like everything else dies, just like we're supposed to. You only get this one moment in time, so make the best of it and try to have a good run, because when it's over, you're done. I don't understand why some people have such a problem with that and have to pretend that the universe exists just for them, as if they're the reason for creation. Such infinite arrogance. Yet they call me arrogant because I think that we're insignificant on the cosmic scale and that the universe obviously doesn't care about us at all. That's humility, not arrogance. I hear a lot of rhetoric from religious believers who can't seem to understand what it's like to live without a religious belief, without even a possibility of being judged by someone's imaginary God someday, supposedly after we die. These believers often lament that life on earth is this terrible experience that you have to endure just to get to the prize that they think they're going to get after death. So they waste the one life that we know we really do get, and they don't appreciate it. Nor can they understand how unbelievers can suffer the slings and arrows of life's outrageous misfortune and still seem to enjoy the ride for the most part. I mean, I know a lot of people whose lives were much worse than mine. I mean, I was a stupid kid and an intolerable ass once upon a time, like a lot of young men are. No one seems to realize when they're the bad guy. But fortunately, I got better once I grew up enough to realize that the axis of the earth doesn't run through my colon. Still, I enjoyed my life before and since. I probably had it better than I deserved, and I know a lot of religious people who deserved a lot better than they got. So I don't know how they can still believe in their God. I mean, looking at them, I can't even believe in karma anymore. What happened to them was so unfair. But I'm not going to complain either. I'm happy. Knock on wood, right? So for those people who insist that they must be here for a purpose, even if it is apparently just to be pawns in some cruel game, those people who believe that the meaning of our lives is arbitrarily imposed upon us by some outside agent who clearly does not have our best interests at heart, and that the meaning of your life is determined posthumously, and that it's not even your choice to make, let me pose a hypothetical question. Imagine that you live out your life as you're doing now till you come to the end and you die. But instead of rising out of your body or finding yourself at the pearly gates or in the pit of hell, because you know why, being an unbeliever in Islam, for example, instead of achieving nirvana or being reborn, this time as a cow, as your consciousness ebbs, you become acutely aware that this hasn't necessarily happened yet, that this is only one of many possible futures. An idea emerges in your dying mind that this doesn't necessarily have to be your end, that this didn't have to be your life. You can't explain how you know this, of course, but somehow you realize after your last breath that very rarely some people get the choice of whether they're satisfied with the life they've lived or would you like to do it again? Was there a moment in your past that defined the rest of your life in a way that you wish it hadn't? An avoidable accident, perhaps, or an extremely regrettable action or decision, something that compromised the quality of life or your ability to enjoy it. You suddenly realize as you're dying that somehow inexplicably you know that simply by choosing, you could just wake up before that happened, before you did that. Otherwise, you could simply choose to wake up again on your 18th birthday or at some favorite year in high school, as you were then, with your whole future, the life you just live now, being no more than a vivid dream. And what you realize now at death's door is that you have seen your future. And you can let that one be, in which case you're at the end of it and you're ready to die now. But you're one of the lucky few who get to decide, is that the life that you want your friends and family to remember? Or would you do it again, differently? Understand that there is a downside to this. Even if you lived your life over again the same way, you married the same person and consummated that relationship at the exact same time as you did in your previous life, you would not produce the same children that you did before. Because even if they were from the same eggs, they would be different sperm. So the kids would be very different people. And you don't know yet who they are, or how they'll turn out, just like you didn't with any kids you might have had already in this old life that's ending now. Of course, a lot of you wouldn't marry the same person or work the same job. Having the wisdom you do now, a lot of you might have stayed in school longer or studied harder or took that other job that would have been such a great opportunity for you. If you lived again, your life would not be the same as it was, because you're not quite the same person anymore than you were then. You don't know if this new life would replace your old life, or would it begin a new timeline such that both realities exist in parallel universes. But in your current situation, in that moment when you have to make that choice, as your mind begins to die from lack of oxygen, you don't have time to work these sorts of things out. Instead, you realize that if you take that opportunity and choose to wake up again at 16 years old or 21 years old or whenever you choose, you understand that this do-over life will not be judged by any God. You innately understand that lifetime, life and time, don't necessarily work together the way you always thought they did when you were alive. You realize that neither life has technically happened yet. But if you're satisfied with the life you've already seen and experienced, and that's how you want to be remembered, then you'll die now. And maybe there's another life, a spiritual life after that, you don't know. But instinctively you comprehend that if you choose to live this second life, and follow some other path with a younger body but a more learned mind, you can make the best of all your advantage of foreknowledge and hard-earned wisdom. You could be a great inventor, a humanitarian, hero, or you can be a selfish tycoon and be just as evil as you want to be. Doesn't matter. You won't go to heaven or hell or come back as anything else. When this mulligan life is over, you will not live again, not in any form. Innately, somehow, you understand that. If I had that option, I've come to terms with the mistakes that I made that made me who I am. So I would lose an important part of myself if I did it again. So I might be okay with dying then. Since I'm on the verge of that anyway, all I have to do is let go. But if I choose to live again, I would be a much better person than I was as a young man, meaning I would be better to other people. I think you would too. I think most of us would, even if we knew that there was no threat of hell or posthumous punishment of any kind. Somehow, as all of your other senses fade, you have a heightened awareness of your impending death, and you understand that if you choose to relive your youth, there will be no afterlife, not this time. If there ever was an option for that in your first life, you won't have it again on the mulligan. Whether or not other people have souls that float up into heaven or reincarnate, you don't know. But you realize that this is a singular opportunity that very few living beings get, and no one ever gets it twice. Because repeating your life over and over again would be hellish too. Somehow you understand that the terms of this action are that at the end of this second life, this do-over, then death is final. That when you die, that's it. Your mind will shut off and your consciousness will blink out of being, just like you didn't exist for all those ages before you were born and didn't even notice it before your brain developed enough to awaken and exist and experience existence. Death would be just like when you go under general anesthesia. No dreams, no memories, no awareness of any kind, no passage of time, nothing. So whether you would have been judged by a god or a karma on the mistakes of your old life is irrelevant to this second chance life. If you would take that option, then you're okay with life neither having nor needing meaning, because if you choose to live it, this new life wouldn't mean anything except whatever you want it to.